Hey guys, how's it going? This is Duncan again for Syber Skool. I'm here again by my welcoming friend and awesome person, Jeff.
Howdy do.
So guys, today this is another part of what we were talking about to how to maximize your PC's performance and how to kind of gauge it. And a lot of people usually say like you should go with benchmarks, but every PC is different because benchmarks basically they say here's the standard of what you should be running and this is where your PC's at. A lot of times people feel like they need to get high end, the best of, and stuff, but it always varies on the person. So we'll say, based on a typical user, they won't really need that much of a high end PC. They'll need something that's either can be like quad core, anywhere from like 3.0 to like 4. I mean, even then, that's still a lot of power. But with that, they're not really doing demanding things. It's small little trivial games, stuff that you can kind of get, like it's pretty simple. Like I think like a regular system build for an average user would be one, was it a quad core, probably about 8 gigs of RAM. They don't need a high-end graphics card. They can actually use the built-in, graphics card because sometimes they're able to play stuff like League without having a high-end graphics card. And you're like, well, how do I gauge the performance of that? The easiest way you can mostly look at, gauging the performance of any PC is how does it really work for you? It's kind of more of a preference. Kind of weird because like you can say there's a benchmark and it runs super ultra fast, but with the way that people gauge things today, it's mostly by the delivery of how like fast something opens from the instant gratification of opening up applications. So if they click an application, they want it to be like there in a second. So usually that comes down again to what you're using it for. Using it for, like we said, the basic user would only require about a quad, core CPU. Usually you can get those in an i5. Some AMDs on the lower ends of their series actually have, quad cores that are perfectly fine to use for people who want to be a little bit more frugal. The other part is that, the RAM won't cost as much. I think like 8 gigs of RAM is pretty cheap, to be honest.
$30, $40 probably about that.
Yeah, $30, $40. It's a budget PC. It's the ones you find that, they sell a whole unit for $400 or $500 at the cheapest, for a story. And then it kind of moves up from there. So you have a home user, and then you have your college student, which again ranges more into still kind of a home user, but college students can be using it for a bunch of different things. They can be using it for gaming, some slight little heavier gaming with that, where you would probably need a little more low-end graphics card because I assume they're not playing super hardcore games. And then you would need something more, again, like a quad-core chip. Again, anywhere from the i3 to i5 series itself. On top of that, you can also, get 8 gigs of RAM. Because, again, they're not getting programs that are intensive heavy. After that point, it kind of goes up, again, to the next level, which we're now seeing a moderate gamer, person who does photos, to slight video editing, where it now jumps from going from a 4-core to now a more of like an 8-core. An 8-core allows more things to be processed, and also more RAM because it's going to need the space to process all that information. The graphics card will probably be a little bit more high-end, probably in the mid-class range. It can also vary from stuff that's running, I want to say, DDR5 to DDR4. You can have right now I think you can actually do DDR3 and still get through all the programs pretty well. But I say DDR4 for safety. And again, the same thing goes for the other classes below it as we dignified. But, what do you think for more of a gamer? Like, maximizing your PC performance, kind of gauging it.
As far as the memory on it?
Yeah. Like, what would you think would be the standard for them?
Yeah, probably DDR3 or 4. In terms of price, what you're looking at is probably...
We're talking low end. They were playing League of Legends.
Yeah, you could
games.
For low end gaming, you can definitely get away with a $100 video card. That's a decent price point for those video cards.
Yeah, and again, guys, you're like, well, dude, how do you make sure about this kind of stuff? Because you're gauging your usage of your PC depending on what you're using it on, but you're also kind of gauging it on how fast. Again, really is it fast enough for you? And we're kind of just giving you guidelines. I mean, you can benchmark it all you want. There's a lot of great programs. You can go into Steam. There's other, 3D, VR. That's where you go heavy into like testing your graphics or other things like that.
FutureMark is a highly recommended program. But,
Yeah, so FutureMark, so those are like for benchmarking for if you're like I want to be a top stud. But most of most of the average consumers don't really need that much. So out of that, you can also move up to the, now we're saying moderate gamer, which will need to buy, again, an 8-core, 16 gigs of RAM. And again, guys, you want to shoot for more of like DDR4 and going higher for kind of stuff like that, because I'm pretty sure over time people will watch this video and they'll go like, what are you talking about? DDR4? Who uses that garbage anymore? With the shifting of computers and CPUs constantly happening. This video will probably be out of date by the time we finish.
Obsolete before it came out the box.
It was DDR6 immediately. It was like, we were like so long in that. So that kind of stuff right there is, for a moderate gamer. You want to find, though, this is where it kind of changes, is even though we went with the CPU that's a little bit faster, it's not going to be as intensive as it will be on the graphics card. The graphics card itself will actually be what you're going to focus on at this point. You can go with a higher end processor, but usually with the higher CPU and RAM, that's mostly for so basically taking the programs and being, God, I can't remember. I'm just like totally out of brain for it. This is going to be me going like blah, 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 like last time, going the thing we use.
We're trapped in here again?
Yeah, we're trapped in here again
God.
with no cell phones. I know. Calm down, Joe. No, I'm just kidding. It helps organize where the programs are going constantly and delegate them through each CPU. So, I mean, like there's one part of the CPU working on one thing, one managing your windows open, and one managing, so having all those little guys, it's basically having a bunch of servants. CPU is, the brain that's saying, oh, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. And the RAM is basically storing everything, and processing that information and, keeping it running for you. But in the end of stuff, the way that it functions after that point is, again, by the user. So if you're moving up into a more gaming atmosphere, you're going to look at your GPU, which is your graphics card. The GPU itself comes down to really, what you're gaming for. Like, do you want high-end crisp graphics? That's where you would look at a, GTX 1080 with DDR5, RAM and, all the other bells and whistles that go with it, and the cool fans and the whooshy, and, all that stuff that you think is just so incredible on a graphics card, and for some reason you just can't contain yourself, so you have to go bug your mom for the $30 that you're missing just to buy that thing. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But more or less, those are kind of more high-end cards that you're gonna end up spending anywhere from $500 upwards to $1,000.
Yeah.
And I think one. So there's a couple that are two, right?
I don't doubt it. I've seen some crazy rigs out there, graphical rigs that are just like ridiculous in price, and I mean, I think they're obsolete in like a month anyway. So why even bother?
Yeah. It's you want things that will stand the test of time unless you're working for like NASA. Even what's sad is the at-home computer you use is what NASA is currently using. Just remember that. That's on you. Those rocket ships, they're coming down because that computer can't process with much. But again, and so going back to what we were saying, you're going to focus more on the GPU and its performance. It goes back all again to how does this affect you? You seeing the game load up fast enough? Is it not being fast enough? Do you see, your program for Adobe in some sense loading too slow? Does it render too slow? Again, these are programs that people, lose their mind. Even I did. Like, I mean, why won't this work in this sense? And why isn't this? And usually, guys, like, I currently run a slow AMD chip. But it actually helps me stream, helps me do all my videos. I mean, it's really not that bad of a CPU. It does pretty well for what it is. I mean, and now because programs are getting a little bit more, and I'm becoming abusive with my expanding of 20 windows and leaving it on constantly and doing things you probably shouldn't be doing. And now I don't mean hacking or doing illegals. I just mean you probably shouldn't have 40 windows open on 2 screens. You probably shouldn't leave a game running in the background with Skype still there. You probably shouldn't be doing so much stupid things that I do sometimes. But, hey, I'm a guy who uses his computer quite often. So, I mean, again, that comes down to the user preference and what they're looking at. I mean, what kind of words of wisdom do you have for them?
Nothing really. That's I mean, you pretty much nailed it. That's it.
Yeah, because I think more or less when people think, how do you gauge that? Don't go benchmark your stuff, because all what you'll end up doing is going to buy something you don't need. You'll have a high-end PC. Your kid will probably be looking at VR porn. You've just given them the key to it because you were dumb enough to go buy it. Don't do it, man. just understand your PC ranges on you. Are you, and again, what are you using it for? What are you not using it for? What do you want to, and also kind of think of this question too, is what do you want to expand to in the future? Do you want to game harder? Do you want to, get more videos out and rendering? Because we just built a PC for a couple big YouTube streamers and a few other people that were big, and they just do a lot of heavy juggernaut grinding of just processing out animations. Why the average user won't ever need any of that for years. So now if you're looking for stuff like streaming and gaming, yeah, you want to look towards a little more high end, but again, it's not going to be so drastic because, even a streaming PC does not, require that much. But if you want to get fancy with all the bells and whistles to your stream, yeah, I mean, like, what do you use in yours? I know you do a lot of crazy stuff. I'm a very basic streamer.
What component do I use in mine?
What do you use in your PC?
I use a NVIDIA GeForce 980 Ti, and I run 3 monitors. I've got an i7 6700K, which if you're going to be streaming, I'd recommend an i7 just because of the hyper threading. But that's.
I'm AMD. I don't care. I run on an 8120, baby. That's 5 years old. I stream like a champ.
I got you. But that's basically my setup. And I'll build a PC. I take usually every 3 years. But that's just because I want something extreme. But even with my setup, like I've got 32 gigs of RAM, and somebody told me, they were like, well, you realize it's kind of like putting like a cabbage into a blender that's being run by like a V8 engine or something. It's just overkill. And I was like, yeah, maybe I went a little bit too overboard. I'm not actually using all 32 gigs of RAM.
So. Yeah, you really don't. See, and that's kind of useful. But Jeff is a different case because he wanted the high end and never have an issue. And I get that, logic. If you're that kind of person, go for it. But again, do your research. I am a frugal, I want the best frugalness. So I try to go for the more bang your buck, because that's what I was taught and raised with. So I run with AMD stuff. They're more in the price range of the consumer. I know a lot of people say, oh, this chip lags here, this happens here. But to be honest, I've never had an issue. And I guess maybe it's because I'm not gauging it like, the hardcore PC, hardware guys. But AMD's done nothing but, good by me. You know what? In the beginning, graphics cards were kind of dumpy for me, and I didn't like that, so I did switch. I do use EVGA and NVIDIA for that stuff. I have a 980. I won that off in a dance-off, so, that's going to be an interesting story. You can ask down in the comments below what I had to do for that, so. But besides that, guys, again, these are just our preferences as users. So you will be in the same position, do your research, and then see what you want to do with your PC and what you expect to do with your PC, and if what you'll need will just come pretty much by hand. And here's another great thing: if you really don't know and you're like, I'm just too busy, go to the store. And I'm not saying Best Buy because they'll just sell you something you probably won't even really need. But go to like a Fry's, go to whatever retailer that sells parts and stuff that you can put together, or they can put it for you together, and ask them, because most of the times they're pretty helpful. So. Besides that, guys, if you guys want to actually know anything else, or have any other questions, or any suggestions, or further cyber schools that you guys would feel comfortable with, please put them in the comments down below section. If you liked the video, awesome. Please subscribe. And besides that, guys, my name is Duncan. This has been Jeff, and thank you for being here at Syber Skool.